Hello and welcome to True Crime Rocket Science, the most authentic voice in true crime. Well, breaking news, Baldwin files to dismiss. Maimie Mitchell's lawyer, Gloria Allred, responds. In mid-November, around a month after the incident at Bonanza Creek Ranch, Maimie Mitchell, the script supervisor on Rust, filed her suit. I think it was on the 17th of November. In that suit, she accused Baldwin of playing Russian roulette. Now, about 2 months later, Baldwin's legal team have responded. Their response is a 32-page demurrer. In sum, what the demurrer asks for is that the suit be dismissed. Do they have a case? Before we get to that, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do. Like, share, leave a comment, and let's get started. So there's a pretty good article, fairly concise, quite brief, in Fox News dealing with this. I will put a link to that in the description. But according to the article, quote, the newest motion, this is from Baldwin, suggests that Mitchell's own allegations in her suit failed to state facts sufficient to constitute a cause of action. It's quite an interesting legal defense. Is it going to work? For this episode, had this not been the breaking news, I would have actually dealt with Mitchell's narrative in her suit. We will do that in due course. We will revisit her suit in detail. Suffice it to say, I did find Mitchell's narrative, particularly the section dealing inside the church, dealing with the incident, a tad obtuse. It's certainly the least descriptive or factual in terms of the incident itself. It falls, for example, far short of Serge's version of events and arguably Hannah's too. That's just in my opinion. But it does go further to accuse Baldwin of broader safety issues, including, more specifically, that Baldwin was apparently not supposed to cock or fire the weapon in the scene they were working on when the incident occurred. And of all the crew, you'd think the script supervisor would know this and emphasize this. According to the article, quote, in her suit, Mitchell claimed assault, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and deliberate infliction of harm. And all of that, look at those words, intentional, deliberate, right? The suit argues that Baldwin's actions weren't intentional. And I think there's some merit to that. But is there enough merit to that? According to the article, quote, the motion asks for the dismissal on the ground that despite plaintiff, that's Mitchell's attempt to label claims as intentional, nothing about the allegations against that of any of the defendants intentionally committed harmful conduct under New Mexico law. Then, according to the latest documents, Mitchell conceded that the gun, which was being held by Baldwin, was not intended to be loaded with live ammunition. Interesting point. When it unexpectedly discharged, also interesting point, that was unexpected. And that resulted in Elena's death and Joel's injury. And this indicates to them that her claims of intentional conduct are untrue. I don't know if that is comprehensive enough. That detail may be true or somewhat true. But in general, I think this is thin ice legally. Even if Baldwin did intentionally pull the trigger, which he may not have done, but even if he did, he could not have assumed there were live rounds inside, right? That being said, pointing a firearm at anyone ever is ill-advised. Firing while doing so, even more so. Again, how does one prove that he did, if he did? In that respect, we will have to examine the firing mechanism of the firearm, and that is something that is possibly going to happen in court. And so what was the response of Maimie Mitchell's lawyer, Gloria Allred? And her response was quite curt. She contacted Fox News directly, and this was her curt retort, I think sent via email. She said, quote, the defendants who filed the demurrer are trying to avoid explaining their conduct before a judge and a jury in a court of law. We intend to vigorously oppose their demurrer and we believe that we should be allowed to proceed, end quote. So basically she's saying they're trying to avoid their day in court, and that Alred and her client intend to vigorously make sure that they do go to court. I do think that Mitchell's suit goes well beyond Baldwin's actions or intentions at the moment the firearm is discharged. My personal view has been that is always the case. We've often heard people saying that this is the only question that this is about is how did a live round get into the gun? That's the only question. It goes well beyond that because of Baldwin's position, not only as the lead actor holding the firearm, but also his position as producer. This whole thing was his baby. The whole project was his baby. And so where does his responsibility begin and end? So it's quite an interesting legal case, this. It's quite an interesting legal thing with a lot of moving parts. And any attempt to simplify that is definitely going to be to the benefit of his legal team, because it is quite a complicated story with, as I say, many moving parts and many aspects to it. And so I do think a court should be allowed to hear the evidence because there is a lot of items were seized, and we need to know the evidence more completely. We need to get a better version of events than one on television with sound effects, and a more comprehensive narrative than just an affidavit. And so I do think the court setting is something that is needed in this case. What do you guys think? Will it happen? Well, bear in mind, this is only the first of more lawsuits. We know that Helena's husband has found a legal team already that specializes in wrongful deaths. He hasn't taken any action, but I'm sure that he's watching. He's actually a lawyer himself. I'm sure that he's watching the events playing out. I'm sure others who have sued are also watching and taking notes of Baldwin's legal maneuverings and updating their own strategies based on what is happening. So I'm not going to take it further than that, but I do have quite a lot of material that I want to share with you. Joel Souza's statement made to a officer in terms of the incident report, and then also Maimie Mitchell's affidavit, just the lawsuit, just in more detail, what her case actually is, how much merit is there to her case. So in a legal sense, there was a bit of a doldrum period where Baldwin wasn't handing over his phone and nothing seemed to be happening. Well, now things do seem to be happening, don't they? Thank you for listening, and I'll see you guys next time.